and welcome to the Grain Marketing Action Plan tutorial, or Grain Map for short. My name is Chris Hausworth and I am the creator of this tool and I'll be your guide today. First we want to go over the high-level layout of the spreadsheet tool. We've got some customized heading up here, some assumptions in the top portion of the spreadsheet. It drops down in the next section. The first green bar here is executed sales with some analysis. And lastly, planned sales with some analysis. Next, I want to point out that there are two tabs in the default spreadsheet, corn and beans. If you have more than just those two crops, there's no problem there. We just do a right click and copy that tab over. Important to point out here that as you change tab name here, the heading is a formula that is derived straight from that tab name. Also want to point out that this date is formula driven also, so you'll never forget to update the date, update some information and hit print. You'll automatically have the right date. Last thing I want to point out is I typically will leave one tab for each crop in a crop year, and when I'm ready to start a new crop year, I'll do a save as and rename that file as the next crop year. And that way I have only one crop year per spreadsheet. Let's dive in. Let's flip over to 2021 corn here and get started. Thanks. In this first cell up here, we want to update that farm name to your name. So let's just pretend your name is Johnson Farms. And we've got the Grain Marketing Action Plan, and our first tab here is 2021 corn. And so this box here is our assumptions. This is the assumptions for this crop on our farm. This is the starting point of all of our decision making for the rest of our grain marketing for this crop year. So we want to put in the total acres of this crop, and let's just assume we have one 80-acre field of corn, and our per acre yield. If you have more than one field, obviously this number is going to be a weighted average projection. Some guys will use an APH number of their insured bushels. Some farmers will want to use more than that or less than that. And certainly you can update this as you go on throughout the year. You can start more towards an insurance number and market against that number. And as the weather goes along throughout the year and you get more confident in what your yield's going to be, you can ratchet that up or down as need be. The next key number here that we want to enter is our revenue goal. So my philosophy in grain marketing is always starting with the cash revenue generation that I need from each acre to make my farm work from year to year. And you may discover this in your own financial planning as the year starts. You may be able to get this number from your conversation with your lender when you're doing the line of credit renewal every winter and getting that operating note set up for the next year. Hey, how much revenue do I need per corn acre to make my cash flow work? The blue cells need updated. Anything that's gray is a formula. This is giving us our 80 acres times 190 bushels per acre. We've got 15,200 bushels that we want to market this year. Modify that throughout the year. That total will change. And then here is the total farm revenue that we're trying to generate. And then some quick division here, revenue divided by bushels. Our projected break even here is 368. We're not going to lean on that number too heavily, but it's a starting point. So that basically sets us up for our assumptions. Over here on the left side, we can hide that assumptions box if we want to. There's a grouping over here that you can trim that down if you don't like all that space. Otherwise, you can leave it open so you can just remind yourself of what your assumptions are, either way. Let's make our first sale. In the first column here, location, grain buyer. You may have more than one buyer that you want to indicate. You may have one buyer that multiple locations that you deliver to. Just give yourself a note of where this grain is sold, where is it heading. So we'll just say co-op 1 here. Contract description, we've had a forward cash sale. Memo, I like to put in the contract number. We just want to keep our sales straight here. So whatever kind of notes you need to put in to make sure you remember what that sale was when you come back to it. Bushels, of course, is an important part. The quantity, we want to keep track of that. So let's say our first sale was 2,500 bushels. We sold at 425 futures, no fee on a forward cash, and we sold at 4,500 basis. So we made a sale at 380 cash. You can see here I put in the futures price, the basis, some of that detail. If you want to skip over that detail, you can just override. This is a formula. You want to put your basis in as a negative number if it's under, positive if it's over basis. But this is a formula to add those detail items together. If you don't want all that detail, you could just override that cash item and then collapse this group up here. But I like to keep track of all that detail. Plus I like to know what my weighted average futures price is at the end of the year, what my weighted average basis is, cash price or sales that I did. So as much or as little detail as you want to put in here, number one thing is we want to stay organized. So we want enough information that when we open this up a month from now, we know what is going on. I find that the farmers who stay organized are better decision makers. Farmers who never know how much they have sold have a hard time making sales even at what is a really good price. That feeling of I don't know how much I have sold can really prevent you from pulling the trigger in the future. Location or the grain buyer, a description, a memo, a contract number, or some other kind of a note you want to keep for yourself, quantity and price. We've entered our first sale. Also do other types of sales. It doesn't have to be quite that vanilla if you don't want it to be. So co-op 1, let's say we sold a hedge to arrive. Another thing I forgot to mention earlier, you may, let's say this is against December futures. You might add in here in the description for Oct 21 delivery. It might be a note that you want to keep track of there. We are the only person selling grain to these folks, so we are the next contract number down the line. And we also did 2,500, but we didn't get quite as good of a futures price there. Basis is still 45 under here. Now on a hedge to arrive, because I'm calling it a hedge to arrive here, the assumption is I haven't set basis, so basis is still open. So what I like to do on anything that's variable, change the color here, change the fill color to an orange or a yellow, something that will indicate to me that that is not set in stone yet. If I left it white, then it's locked in. But if it's a color like orange, that's triggering me that that's still a variable floating number, that when I bring this open in 2 weeks and I want to check, I want to pull up the website and say, oh, basis has gotten better. Now they're 40 under. So if I set that today, it'd be 375. On a hedge to arrive, maybe you've got a fee that you want to keep track of there. Depends on your buyer. So there you go. Those are the different ways to put in a couple different contract types. Another thing to keep track of here, you might have an accumulator that prices a certain amount of bushels each week, each day, or however your style works. And so that quantity may be something that you need to update. So again, we can do these in a number of different ways. Any item here that is not 100% set, maybe an averaging contract where you don't know the futures price yet, boom, there you go, make that sell orange. The tool is to help you stay organized, remember what's going on, and then these flags, when you highlight that something in a different color, that's a reminder that, hey, I've got to update that number. I've got to double check and go get a fresh number to put in there. So there you go. That's how you keep track of your executed sales. Now we get into the real meat and potatoes of this spreadsheet tool. We've got our assumptions in up above. We've got our sales over here that are executed. How are we doing? These stats here are going to give us the indication of how we're going to do against our original goal. That's why having that revenue goal is such a critical part of the grain map. We're putting it together an action plan of how we're going to achieve our original revenue goal. That's the whole point of what we're doing here. Top box here, sales progress. So out of our original 15,200 bushels, we have sold on a per acre basis 68.75 bushels. Based on that 5,500 down here, the totals, we've sold 5,500. We've got an average futures price here, average basis price 42, our average cash price is 378. So all that information is feeding into these formulas over here to the right. Based on those 5,500 bushels sold, we've secured $260 of revenue per acre against our $700 per acre goal. So we've used 36.2% of our bushels, and we've locked in more than 37% of our revenue. Again, remember, we've got some of these things in orange, so some of those are floating, but as of today, with what we know today, that's our progress. And if basis improves again another nickel, you can see that that revenue number marches right up along. So we can keep track of our progress that way. We get instant feedback, which is exactly what we want. We want to know where we're at all times. Here, the break-even price, this is taking these existing sales and working backwards from our various inputs. So based on our acres, based on our yield, based on our revenue goal, based on our existing sales, we need to achieve 363 or better on the rest of our unsold bushels to reach that break even. By break even, I mean break even against our revenue goal, not against our costs. It's one thing to cover your costs. We need other things. We need cash flow. We need profit. We need return on investment. So that's why we go with the revenue goal and not a simple cost number. So we need 363. You'll notice that number is lower than 368. We started this deal with our assumptions with the 368 break even. Well, we've made some good sales. We've had a 380 sale. We're looking at something that could be set today at 372 or $4. So those high averages, weighted average of 378 is above the 368. Therefore, our break even on the rest of the unsold bushels is driving it down 363. The next section here, break even yield, is similar. It's just a backwards computation from the opposite factor. So what is the minimum number of bushels we need to raise this year to achieve our revenue goal, given that we've already sold at these prices? So we projected 190 at the beginning of the year. Maybe that was our crop insurance proven yield. Based on those early sales of average 378, all the things we've already talked about, those sales are on the books already, given what we know. And then there's one more blue cell here you'll see. At today's posted bid, I've got in here, this is described as October 2021. You may, for your mileage may vary, you may need to edit that depending on what your assumption is. But at today's posted bid, and then give yourself a note of where that number came from. Say today's posted cash bid is 370. If I have the previously executed sales and I could sell everything at 370 today, I need to raise 187 2/3 bushels to reach my revenue goal. If we're doing a good job selling, this break-even yield is going to be below the 190, and that of course is our goal. We make these early sales at good prices. What I really want to try to do is drive down the yield that I need to produce to break even and meet my revenue goal. The better I sell, the less pressure I put on the weather and all those uncontrollable environmental factors that affect my profitability. We don't know what that quantity is going to be until we get harvest completed, we get it across the scale. That quantity is a floating number until it's done, and by then it's too late to know. That's why we have this formula here. That's why I like to look at this break-even yield is, okay, as I'm getting my bushels sold, hopefully I'm creating a need for less bushels. And if I do raise 190, if I do raise 200, I only needed 187 to meet my revenue goal. Beautiful. Now maybe I've got 3 or 13 extra bushels above and beyond my revenue goal. That's exactly the place I want to be. And then down here, how many bushels do we have left to sell? 15.2 is our projection. We've sold 55. We've got 9,700 to market. And that's where we're going to look at offers in the next section. We're finally to the plan portion of the grain marketing action plan. We have all of our assumptions. We have our existing sales on the books. Now let's turn our attention to the future and look at how we make decisions going forward. Again, we've got a place for some information for our plan sales or our working offers. And we've got an analysis section over here that mirrors above. So we're going to see our sold bushels, our revenue, our break-even price and yield, and bushels left to sell our offer. But all these formulas are going to incorporate everything going on up above plus our offers. So here's our place to put in some hypotheticals and definitely a place to keep track of working offers. So let's say we have co-op 1 forward HTA offer, and we'll say it's working because we've entered that. It's a firm offer. And we've got an average going on of 422. We've made sales at 425 and 415. So let's say we have put in an offer that if we get to 435 futures, we're going to pull the trigger again. And of course, a 3-cent fee, just like our last HTA. Here's a shortcut of how I try to make my life easier here. I'll use formulas, equals, and then that same basis, because this is the same buyer in the same time frame, so we know that when I come back and update this basis, that'll change right along with it. So if you're comfortable using some formulas, go ahead and do that. These futures as well. So now we can see here that our formulas changed down here in the plan section, but not up above. So up there, we've got 68 bushels sold per acre. If we got another 2,500 offer filled, that's going to move us to 100 bushels sold. So we'd be about half sold if that offer fills. We've got only 52% of our bushels used, but over 54% of our revenue achieved. The wider we can make that gap, the better. We'd be down to a 353 break-even price on the remaining unsold bushels if we get that offer filled versus a 363 as it's at today. Again, this is based off of this posted bid. And again, 187 based on our existing sales, 185 if we get this offer filled. And then, so we've got 9,700 bushels left to sell, but 7,200 if that offer would hit. That way we don't get ourselves oversold or overcommitted. Another thing I like to do here is, you'll notice I put in an accumulator here that's priced 500 bushels, but that's in progress. So I want to keep track. I don't want to lose track of those bushels. So what I like to do here is hit copy paste, and then I keep track of that accumulator down here, and say that this thing is still working. And let's say we put in 1,000 bushels originally. 500 of them have already been priced. So 1,000 is our original quantity. Whatever's up here is what's actually been committed or achieved. The thing's not knocked out yet, so it's working. So I've got 500 left. Now, I do that because as I increase my sales up here, it's going to drop automatically. It's one less thing to think about. So another thing you may want to keep track of here is the double up portion of these accumulators. And you don't want to get yourself oversold knowing that there might be, say, a euro double out there. So let's say there's euro potential for double up of another 1,000 bushels of all the same pricing information. So if that thing would expire above your pricing point and double, you want to be able to keep track of that. So you may plug that kind of information down in here in the planned sales too, just so when you look down here at the bushels left, you're getting a really good feel for how much you have left to market. Obviously, if all that stuff hit, we wouldn't be upset about it because we liked the price when we did it, and it's a solid cash price, and it's going to help us drive down our bushels required. Just want to keep track of those quantities so we don't get oversold and end up in a tight spot with more sales than we have bushels. Again, this whole spreadsheet is to help us be active forward sellers and lock in that revenue. Part of that is just keeping track of our quantities and make sure we don't get ourselves in trouble by overextending ourselves. If you run out of space here, if you've got a large farm operation, you've got a lot going on, or maybe you just like to space things out, maybe put your cash sales together, your hedge to arrives in another group and have some blank lines just to help yourself keep track of what you got going on, you may need more lines in here. If you highlight a couple of rows here, right click and insert, all you've got to do here, all the formulas will keep working. All you got to do is drag and drop this cell here to make that work. That's the only minor adjustment you need to make. I would recommend, you saw that when I added those rows, I went in between these two boxes, maybe down here on 23 or on 18 or 14, just so you don't end up spacing out these boxes here. The other thing I wanted to show you here is the bonus feature. This is the basic grain map here, where you've got one crop on each tab and one item for acres and yield. If you want extra detail, if you're a person who likes to really drill down and have that granularity, I've got the bonus version here is with field info. And this is, the corn and soybean tabs are exactly the same, but there's an added tab up here for field info. So you can enter your fields and a note about each field individually. You can add lines there if this isn't enough for you. But then you can add your gross acres and get a running total of how many acres you're covering. Your share, if it's 100% yours, owned or rented. If it's crop share, it's 50-50, or maybe you operate it and you get 20% just for the machinery. and the labor, put in your share. This gives you your share of the revenue acres. So let's say that field 2 was 50-50 crop share. So you've got 150 acres. You plug in the crop that you're going to plant on each field in this year, the yield that you expect. That way, when you come over here to corn, you've got the acres and the yield. It is a true weighted average that you don't have to scratch out on a napkin to come up with that number. You can just put in that detailed information and the formulas will calculate it all for you. And then off to the right here, if certain fields get stored, if certain fields come to town, just a couple of extra things to help you keep track and stay organized. This is a drop-down list I have set up. If you like that, if you don't, you can override it. This formula here is looking at this cell, so you'll want to make sure that this crop over here in this blue column matches the heading up here. If you want to add something down here, let's say you plant seed beans, you can add that down here in the crop list, and pretty soon we've got test 3, which is 80 acres at 100%. Now in my drop down menu, I've got seed beans, and let's say I anticipate 60 bushels, but nothing came over here, so I need to also add seed beans here, and boom, there, it'll do the math for you. It's set up, it's ready to go, and you can certainly reach out to me if you have questions getting this set up. So here's the bonus feature. If you want to add a little more granularity in your info, I really like this. I use it for myself. So if you have any questions, give me a shout. Thanks.